The first thing I felt was the cold, sharp, biting, seeping through my jacket as the snow swallowed the trail. The second was her hand on my arm, steady as an anchor, and her voice cutting through the wind, "We're not making it back. We have to find shelter, and we have to keep each other warm." That's when I knew, this wasn't just a storm. It was the moment the quiet, uncrossable line between us vanished, and nothing would ever be the same. My name is Silas Hale. I'm 26, a freelance graphic designer who works from a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. The city's hum is distant enough to feel safe, close enough to grab groceries without talking to more than one person. I like my life small, same coffee mug every morning, sweatshirts that smell like detergent and pine, projects that let me disappear behind a screen. Predictability isn't boring, it's armor. I've never been good at the messy parts of people. College taught me that. My ex said I loved my work more than I loved her. She wasn't wrong. Walls are easier than fumbling through feelings, than explaining why silence feels safer than conversation. My best friend, Milo, is the opposite. He's a tour guide, loud, magnetic, the kind of person who makes strangers feel like old friends. We've been inseparable since middle school, and he's spent years trying to yank me out of my bubble. Last month, he called with that tone, excited, unshakable, like he'd already booked the tickets. "Silas, you're coming to Lake Tahoe with me. Ski trip. My treat. And my mom's joining, she needs a break from her chaos." I said no. Skiing meant crowds, cold, and small talk with Milo's friends. But when he mentioned his mom, something in me caved. Clara Bennett is 46. I've known her since I was 17, when Milo dragged me to their house after my dad left. She was never the type to smother with hugs or ask intrusive questions. She'd just set a mug of hot cocoa in front of me, sit by the fire, and let the silence feel okay. Milo told me she used to be a conflict journalist, chasing wars, documenting pain, seeing things no one should. I believed it. She carried herself like someone who'd built a fortress around her heart, one quiet observation at a time. I'd always thought of her as Milo's mom, kind, untouchable, a woman who existed in the background of my life. Never as someone who might see me, really see me, until Tahoe. The lodge was chaos, families laughing, skis clattering, music blaring from the bar. Milo and his friends were already planning backcountry runs, their voices loud enough to shake the walls. I found a corner by the fire, laptop open to a half-finished design, and tried to blend in. Then Clara sat down next to me, a thermos in hand, and smiled. Not a polite smile, one that said she got it. "Skiing's overrated," she said. "I'd rather walk than spend the day falling on my butt." So we walked. The trail was peaceful, snow-dusted pines, air so quiet you could hear your own breath, the kind of stillness that wraps around you like a blanket. We talked about nothing important, my designs, her work editing a travel magazine, the way Tahoe's snow smelled like fresh earth. Then the sky turned. Snow came down in sheets, thick and blinding, erasing the path in seconds. My phone died. The cold bit through my gloves. I panicked, heart racing, hands shaking, mind blank. Clara didn't. She grabbed my arm, pulled me to a stop, and said, "Breathe. We'll find shelter." Her voice was calm, but I saw her lips turn pale, her fingers tremble as she zipped her jacket tighter. We found the cabin by accident, abandoned, dusty, but dry. I managed to start a fire in the stone hearth, the flame sputtering to life like a fragile promise. We sat on a splintered wooden bench, wrapped in scratchy wool blankets, our shoulders pressed together to share warmth. Outside, the storm roared, but inside? It was silent, heavy, charged. That's when she said it, "We have to keep each other warm. No choice." She didn't say it like a suggestion. She said it like a fact. And as the firelight danced across her face, turning her honey blonde hair to gold, I knew this was no longer about survival. It was about letting the storm break down the walls we'd both built. The fire crackled, and the cabin slowly warmed. I pulled off my gloves, wiggling my numb fingers. Clara untied her forest green scarf, damp from melted snow, and set it aside, a few strands of hair falling loose around her face. "You did good with the fire," she said quietly. "Most people would have frozen up." I laughed, short and shaky. I was frozen up. Just hiding it. She smiled, a real smile, soft and unguarded, the kind that makes you forget how to breathe. Hiding it counts. We sat there for a long time, not talking. The silence wasn't awkward. It was gentle, like we'd been doing this for years. I noticed her hands still shaking, her shoulders hunched against the cold. I shifted closer, my knee brushing hers, and draped my thick flannel jacket over her shoulders. She looked up, surprised. "You don't have to, I want to," I said. She didn't argue. She pulled the jacket tighter, then leaned her shoulder into mine. The warmth of her seeped through my shirt, and something in my chest unlocked, something I didn't know was locked. "Clara," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "Are you okay?" She stared at the fire for a long time before answering. "I'm tired," she said. "Not just today. Tired of being the strong one. Tired of never letting anyone see that I'm scared, too." Her voice cracked, just a little. She told me about the wars, how she'd had to be brave, even when she wanted to run. About Milo's dad dying when he was 10, how she'd had to be both parents, both anchor and safe place. About how no one had ever asked her if she needed to be held, too. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't try to fix it. I just let her talk, and when her hand brushed mine, I didn't pull away. Our fingers rested together, warm and still, like they'd always belonged there. "I forgot what it's like to just be," she said softly. "To not have to be anything for anyone." I looked at her then, not as Milo's mom, not as the tough journalist, but as a woman who was tired, lonely, and human. "You can just be here," I said. "That's enough." Her eyes met mine, and the air between us shifted. It was thick, warm, electric, like the storm outside had concentrated all its energy into this tiny cabin. She leaned in slowly, so slowly I could have pulled away. I didn't. Her forehead touched mine, her breath warm against my lips. For a second, we stayed like that, frozen, scared, alive. Then she kissed me. It was soft, careful, like she was afraid I'd shatter. I kissed her back, my hand moving to her waist, pulling her closer through the blanket. The kiss didn't rush, there was no need. It was gentle, honest, full of all the things we couldn't say. When we pulled away, her eyes were glistening, but she was smiling. "I needed that," she whispered. "So did I said. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her, holding her close enough to share my warmth. We talked in fragments, her stories of distant countries, my nights spent designing alone, pretending I liked the silence. Sometime after midnight, she fell asleep, her breathing steady against my chest. I stayed awake, watching the fire, listening to her, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, belonging. When I woke, the fire was low, and gray morning light streamed through the cabin windows. Clara stirred, lifting her head, and our eyes met. Panic flashed across her face, quick, sharp, then faded into relief. "You're still here," she said. "Still here," I replied. Outside, the storm had passed. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter roared. Rescue. I felt a surge of relief, then a twist of sadness. The cabin had been our bubble, safe, quiet, free from the roles we played. Now the world was coming back. We stepped outside, the cold hitting us like a slap. The sky was clear, the snow sparkling in the light. Rescue workers waved from a clearing, and Milo came running, his face red, eyes wild. He tackled Clara into a hug, squeezing her so tight she laughed. "I was so scared," he said. "I thought I'd lost you." "You could never lose me," she said, but her eyes were on me. Milo turned to me, clapping me on the back. "Man, thank you. For keeping her safe." I nodded, but I couldn't find the words. The ride back to the lodge was loud, radios buzzing, questions flying, blankets being passed around. Clara sat across from me, her posture straight, her calm mask back in place. But when our eyes met, just for a second, I saw it, the same spark from the cabin. Still there. Still real. We left Tahoe the next day. The drive back to Portland was silent, Milo chattering on about the rescue, Clara staring out the window, her hand resting on her lap where mine had been. When we got home, life resumed, my designs, her magazine, Milo's tours. But something was different. The silence in my apartment felt heavy, empty. I texted her a week later, "Are you okay?" No reply. I told myself the cabin had been a mistake, a moment of weakness, fueled by cold and fear. I tried to forget the way her lips felt, the way she'd leaned into me, the way she'd said she'd felt seen. Then one evening, I found a package on my doorstep. Inside was her forest green scarf, folded neatly, still smelling like pine, and her vanilla lotion. Tucked inside was a note, her handwriting neat and gentle. Not the end. Not even close. Thank you for letting me be just Clara? I keep the scarf on my desk, next to my coffee mug. Sometimes I see her when I visit Milo. She'll smile, her eyes lingering a second too long, and we'll share a silence that says more than words ever could. We never talk about the cabin. We don't need to. Some moments aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be carried, like a scarf, like a kiss, like the quiet courage to let someone see you, even when it scares you. That blizzard taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn, that walls keep out more than just people, they keep out connection. That warmth isn't just from fire, it's from someone who sees your broken parts and chooses to stay. And that sometimes, in the middle of the storm, you find exactly who you've been missing. If this story touched you, if you believe love is about seeing each other's scars and choosing to stay, like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We share emotional romances that celebrate vulnerability, courage, and the magic of unexpected connections. Comment below, seen, if you've ever met someone who truly gets you. We want to hear your story.